like automatically change.
Before we get started, anyone that is speaking, haven't already signed in, please. I've got 6 o'clock, so we will call this meeting to order. Emily, whenever you're ready, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Benner,
Here.
Mr. Cullinan. Mr. Cullinan is absent. Mr. First,
Here.
Mr. Hicks,
Here?
and Mr. Zollers.
I'm here, thank you. All right, any the approval of the minutes from the May 6th meeting? Any changes, or I'll entertain a motion to accept them? All right, we'll let them stand as they are presented. No changes to the agenda, so we'll stay with what's in front of us. What we're going to do on the, anyone that is speaking, if you could please stand up and raise your right hand. Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in front of the commission will be truthful? If so, please answer yes or I do. Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go into public comment, and we're going to do this two ways. One, we're going to start with email first, and the emails pertaining to Eastwood will be read first, and then we'll follow that up with emails from the Oliver.
We received 0 emails from Eastwood, so we'll
Okay,
move to the
nothing
Oliver.
there. Any emails pertaining to the Oliver?
Yes, I have 4. The first email is from Tom and Amy Fee, 7367 Bryden Road. It looks like once the Oliver project was initially approved, we had a bait and switch situation. The original project was to build 56 apartments and 32 townhomes. It looks like since the purchase of the north lot, a single-family residence, everything has changed. Now the plan is to have 126 apartments and 24 townhouses. The Planning Commission sneaked around and had the lot just north of the church changed to residential medium to allow a project like this to happen. What about the single-family lot? Are you intending to change this as well? From the site plan, it looks like they intend to demolish the current house and replace it with multiple family dwellings. The huge increase in population density will create a big problem for traffic in the Main and Lancaster area. Sometimes it's difficult to turn onto Lancaster Avenue from the side streets. The increase in population would also cause a problem with parking. It's completely reasonable to think that each unit would have at least 2 adults each with a car. That would require 300 parking spaces. The plan is for 201 parking spaces. The surrounding neighborhood will fill up with cars parked in front of houses. This happens in many population-dense neighborhoods like around OSU, where apartments are mixed with single-family houses. The increase to 150 units will create a stinking mess to the neighbors on Gibson and Bryden roads. I assume that the dumpsters would be located between the development and the existing properties. Finally, there are currently 687 signatures opposing the development of this project. Thank you for your consideration. The second email, Mr. Todd Burns. I have an address of 7670 Slate Ridge Boulevard. Emily and council members. First, I'm all about new ideas, development, and improving the city and surrounding areas if and only if it makes sense financially and benefits the area without drastic compromise to traffic, schools, etc. When was a traffic study done? Within last 15 to 16 months? If so, it would not be accurate. Businesses were shut down and many worked from home. Adding hundreds of apartments with more traffic makes it seem impossible for residents on this street that struggle to exit their own driveway. It is constant all day long, so I could not fathom the traffic increase. Is there another plan and entrance exit proposed? Next, I am perplexed on how a 3-story dwelling gets approved while surrounded by nothing similar. Also, the plans from the developer lacked a leasing office, which forced him to purchase the next parcel to the north, which is now under contract. Two-story mixed use with owner-occupied is reasonable, but not sure the 3 stories fits this area at all. Why didn't the city consider purchasing this lot for itself to seek out other potential projects, other experienced developers to achieve the highest and best use for this area, like the PNC on Main Street recently? If the council members work for the city and live in the city, although 0 are directly affected, please listen to your residents. Who would handle the timelines and who follow through to see this project gets complete? Please look at the property now. No one consistently mows this lot as it sits. Did you look into the experience, financial integrity, and track record through of this developer? Who will hold him accountable? In summary, there were hundreds of petitions against this project and counting last meeting. Does council care? Every north and southbound arteries between Main and Broad have some apartments planned or being built, causing major increase in traffic. We have so many apartments and 0 owner-occupied homes to purchase, as I brought up last year. I just hope the elected officials can see all points from residents. I know that no one will ever entirely agree whatever is done, but can we try to understand if this is truly the best interest of the city? So many residents are asking about the credibility and integrity of this developer. I hope the city can answer it. The third email is from Danielle Sigmund, 7372 East Bryden Road. I'm writing again with extreme disappointment that this 3-story monster is planning to be built in a neighborhood with barely any 2-story homes. This will tower over the existing homes that are Cape Cod and ranch style, invading privacy. Retention ponds are not going to solve the repetitive flooding that occurs in the Highland Terrace area. The property still shows owned by the church. The gentleman claims he purchased it last year. Why does the auditor show no such information about the new owner? How can we entrust this person to run a successful complex when mowing the empty lot is such a task, has required a formal complaint to code enforcement? The bait and switch going on with this project is truly unsettling. Why has there been no update to the community about the mayor reviewing the project? Also, the traffic study can't possibly be accurate due to many residents working from home due to COVID. The project also shows a dump off into Brookside on Gibson. That home is now owned by the gentleman who applied for the project. Where will students of this proposed project attend school, since we are expected to be at capacity in the next year? And the final email is from Sarah Reed, 7823 Jordan Crossing. Good evening, Planning Commission members, city representatives, and Mr. Oliver. I'd like to speak about the proposed expansion for the project on Lancaster Avenue. The drawings for the project look nice, but there are a number of concerns that should be addressed before this expanded project is approved. I'm more than a little concerned with the lack of transparency involving the transfer of ownership on the property and the original application submittal. It is my understanding that the original application has already been approved, but perhaps we can take care as we consider the expansion request. Number 1, have we given adequate consideration to the impact on the residents that live near the development? Are our city representatives and Mr. Oliver willing to not just hear, but discuss and address their concerns? Number 2, does Mr. Oliver have the experience to develop a large multifamily project? My understanding is that he has been in real estate since 2018, and that began with a couple single-family homes. Now, in a time of steep price increases and building material scarcity, he's decided to go big. The financial business risk here is significant. Is the city prepared to spend taxpayer money to absorb developer risk, as they have with the PNC and Happy Dragon parcels? Number 3, the developer, Mr. Oliver, plans to form a company to manage the apartments. Where will the experience come from to manage a project of this size? Reynoldsburg is not generally known for effectively managed large-scale apartment complexes. How does the city propose to mitigate this risk? Number 4, Mr. Oliver's development website features a single testimonial quote from Pastor Robert Linder, zoning board member and pastor of the church that sold the property to the developer. The quote speaks to Mr. Oliver's commitment to Reynoldsburg, but what I see is a project to profit the developer and the Grace Apostolic Church, potentially with detriment to the surrounding community. Nothing wrong with profit motivation, but we should be clear-eyed as to the project's intentions and potential negative impact, traffic, enjoyment, property values, etc., to the nearby residents. Reducing the density, increasing the proportion of owner-occupied properties, phasing in the development, and making an effort to ensure the project blends with the surrounding area would go a long way towards making this a development we can all be proud of and help mitigate the risk. It's not too late to do those things with the expansion. Thank you. Yes, that was the last email. I'm sorry, Sarah Reed.
so thank you. Now we'll go into slips. We have one pertaining to the Oliver, and the other one will be Glenn Digger will come up on in the discussion in a minute. Okay, thank you. All right, Brett Luzader, if you would, please. You have 3 minutes, plus or minus, to talk.
Thank you, Chairman Zollers, members of the commission. I have a number of concerns with the proposal for the Oliver that are also echoed by our city engineer. But first, I have a concern about the application itself. It says they are proposing to develop on a vacant lot. The last time I looked, there is a single-family home, a pole building, a garage, and numerous other structures. As far as the engineer is concerned, and some of mine are the same, we don't have a facilities demand study worksheet to show that if the proposed 6-inch water line main is adequate to supply the project, plus flow for fire hydrants. If we have to put fire suppression systems into these apartments and whatever, we really don't know if there's enough water to supply these. There appears to be dark spots within the interior of the project. Are these going to be lighted by lights that are on the buildings themselves? And if they are, they need to be displayed on their lighting plan, which they aren't. According to the staff report, they do not meet their parking requirement. There are also concerns about the stormwater plan. Are the stormwater tiles that are being connected to adequate to handle the flow? There's an outlet tile from the east retention basin going through private property. And I think an easement must be obtained prior to approval, or an alternative plan needs to be in place and submitted to this board. These are just a few of my concerns, not just mine, but of our city engineer, as I stated before, that should be addressed before this application moves forward. And with that, until these are addressed, I would ask that you table this until these issues are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luzader. Okay, that, excuse me, that ends the email and slips part of the meeting. Any comments pertaining to anything that we've heard to this point? Okay, all right. Then we have no unfinished business. We'll go into new business. Emily, if you could get us started with application number 1, please.
Thank you, Mr. Zollers. The first application is for major site plan number 2021-5215. I'll read the parcel ID, as there's not a certified address at this location yet. Parcel ID 010-017466. The property was recently annexed into the city from Etna Township under 3 different zoning classifications. The proposal calls for subdividing the parcel, that would be item number 2 on the agenda this evening, into 5 lots with a planned commercial component on lots 1 through 3, which are proposed East Main Street District, and a residential component on lots 4 and 5, zoned residential medium. The applicant is requesting Planning Commission approval of a major site plan for the construction of a new residential development on approximately 35 acres combined with lots 4 and 5. The project will consist of 159 single-story apartment units with attached garages. That's on lot 5, and then 264 apartment units with detached garages and amenities on lot 4. Currently, the site is vacant. The property is within the residential medium zone. The proposed use is listed as a permitted use in residential medium. That would be dwelling attached single family, as well as dwelling multi-unit building complex. The proposed development complies with the RM zone in terms of building height, lot coverage, and setback requirements. The RM zone sets a max density of 24 units per acre. The proposal does call for 17.6 units an acre for lot 4 and 7.8 units an acre for lot 5. Generally, staff is supportive of the proposed site layout. The suggested building typology for dwelling attached single family encourages rear garage access, as well as private open space for each unit. The layout has the townhomes with the garage access on the interior, with the front facades fronting the proposed right-of-way. The applicant has also met the parking requirement. Required parking is one enclosed and one unenclosed off-street parking space for the townhomes. And then Lot 5 provides 655 total parking spaces. Apartments then require one parking space per unit plus one for every 5 units. So that would be 317 for the 264 proposed units. So the parking requirement is met. And with that, if there are any comments from the developer. Yeah.
Before we get to that, I'm just going to read something real quick so we can just put it on the record. Obviously, we have the staff report that's there. This is a new thing that we're doing now, as sort of a precursor, so you'll start to see more of an engineering staff report and the planning and zoning staff report as well. I think it's very important. I also want everyone to kind of understand that when this comes out, what this is doing is this is a sort of a recommendation to the developer as well as to the development staff to make sure that we're following through with those. And basically, it brings to light some of the concerns and questions and things that will be answered and delved into the PGU process. But it's just putting it out there so we have it. Specifically for the Eastwood, I'm just going to read sort of an email from Ryan Andrews, our city engineer. He says, as noted on the staff report we provided for this project, there were a few items regarding water and sewer capacity. These comments are not items that, in my opinion, should hold up the project at this stage, but rather comments that could be addressed during the PGU stage. We just wanted to bring these up now so the developer and their engineers are prepared to address them down the road. It is not uncommon for these types of comments to occur at the planning commission stage and to be resolved during the construction plan stage. I know the developer's engineer is in possession of the sanitary capacity study that we prepared for this area on the city's behalf, so they are aware of the limitations in the system, and I'm sure they are planning their development accordingly. I can also attest to that. Mr. Simonello, the applicant, who's here tonight, who will talk on behalf, we've been working with him and his team since mid last year, maybe even earlier, taking a look at this, working through the 6-month process for the annexation, finally coming to get 2 of the first several lots that will eventually be built out through this master plan community. So we're very happy and excited. Obviously, the annexation went through 3 different zoning classifications with this development, and we're continuing to work through the PGU process, understanding that these are on the outskirts of our east side boundaries, so we're consistently working through them. Ryan, our city engineer, feels very confident that we can overcome a lot of these obstacles. So I want to put that on the record because this is a non-issue for our planning commission this evening. Thank you.
Okay, very good. The applicant's here, I understand. You'd like to walk us through something, give us some information we don't have? Floor is
Sure.
yours. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Joe Simonello, 567 Lozelle Road, Westerville, Ohio. Thank you, Chairman Zollers, Planning Commission. Want to give special thanks to Emily for helping us through the application process and both Andrew and the mayor on welcoming us as developers to Grove City. Or I'm sorry, to Reynoldsburg, so not where Andrew lives. So we were excited for the project. I know this is lot 4 and 5. Lot 1, 2, and 3 are really going to set the tone for a gateway to Reynoldsburg coming from the east. And I think if you look at the last rendering that we included, even though, it's not part of what's before you this evening, it was the excitement that we are going to be able to create along 1,600 plus foot of frontage, a streetscape that will welcome everybody to Reynoldsburg and Eastwood, would be that start. So when you continue into our development, what's before you this evening are 2 multifamily sites, diverse product, single-story ranch, attached 2-car garage, as Emily pointed out. So gearing more towards empty nesters, young professionals. And then we have the 3-story walk-up multifamily as well, for younger and sometimes older. But when you look at the renderings, so what you see here is lots 1, 2, and 3. What's before you this evening is all behind that. But what we're approving tonight, working with the city, Andrew, Development Director, Economic Development, will be able to use the development to help pay for this infrastructure and the entrance features that will be put in on Main Street. So it's all part of a master plan, as Andrew mentioned, behind. So that's a drive with the ranch on the right and the 3-story buildings on the left. We included in our annexation another 80 acres behind where this one ends, and hope to bring a major site plan to you in the next few months. So yeah, it's right behind the blue, which is our residential medium, which will be single-family, individual occupied homes with some 4-family that you see there that will front on a park. So all part of a master plan. We're kind of bringing you the middle of it tonight, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Commissioners? Mr. Benner? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simonello. And you're correct, the renderings are awesome and look very nice. I think we are all looking forward to the development. I have a few questions on the engineer's report, not disregarding what Andrew spoke of earlier, that these could be taken care of later. But there is a notice on number 5 that you should consider providing additional sidewalk. That's in lot 4, to provide better connectivity between buildings. The drawing that we have, and unfortunately, these screens aren't big enough for an old guy, but they're not there, and I don't think that's something that in the PGU later on could be, it could be brought up, but I would like to see this as a condition that there is some more sidewalk connectivity
So,
on lot number 4.
and I apologize, I don't have that, so they're speaking internal to the development of the apartments.
Correct.
And I do think you have, the stop at final engineering. We still need all our engineering plans approved.
That is correct.
So, I don't know, I'm open to a condition. We're working with developers besides myself that will develop the individual sites. So I hate to commit to say there'll be more sidewalks unless we say how many more. Or
Okay, well,
between every building, or.
I understand your reticence.
Yeah.
I hope you understand mine.
Yeah, but I think
You know, you
we
can't
definitely
guarantee me, but
agree.
I can't be guaranteed it's going to happen either. And I think there needs to be more connectivity. I'm not probably smart enough to tell you exactly where they should be or how many there should be, but it is part of our master plan that you have a lot of interconnectivity. And it just seems as if there's a lot of walking along the parking lots in that area.
So it looks,
I think if I could add, I guess,
Yeah.
maybe what we're seeing right here, obviously this is colored rendering, but I think maybe what Ryan was trying to point out in the staff report is you see some of these sidewalks where they're obviously fronting some of the parking, but it's like they didn't carry out the pin stroke all the way around, and really it just needs to be fully enclosed, and that just could be just an overlook, and I think, let's take a look, just for example, because it's on the screen, buildings 8 and 9, right, and then 7. So you see the sidewalk, it goes all the way around, but then it stops up at the top, and it's not there. So there's a disconnect from, obviously, somebody being able to walk into the side of Building 9 from that parking lot, because that's typically where somebody would park at. So I think what we're saying, Joe, is if we can just continue that forward, and that just could just be just an oversight, and of finishing sort of those sidewalks out so people can walk and not have to walk through the grass to get to the parking lots on the sides.
And this is Mr. Hicks. I'll just point out, I'm not the attorney in the room, but the ADA law will require, an accessible route for all the first floor units to all the public amenities. So, I'm sure that, as they go through the plot grade and utility plan, those sidewalks are going to have to get a little bit more robust. I don't know if there's some language that we could agree to conditionally that would make sure that staff has all the tools that they would need to make sure that that some additional sidewalks are done where they're appropriate.
This is Mr. First. Mr. Hicks, do you think if we made it in that sort of language that, the condition that there be sidewalk connectivity from the parking areas into each building, if it does not exist, and that all of the, it meet all the ADA requirements? I mean, that would obviously occur, of course, but just as a, transparent item. You think
Right.
some language like that might be acceptable?
Yeah, I mean, trying to nail it down. Maybe it's the frontage of where the building fronts along the parking areas. That seems to be the missing piece on this, where I'm seeing sort of missing teeth, right? Of areas where it kind of feels like there should be a sidewalk, but there isn't. I don't know if we want to get too far down in the details, because obviously the developer is going to hire a civil engineer that's going to be laying out all those, sidewalks and grading plan and everything else, and things can get moved around based upon existing conditions. So, yeah, I'm sure there's some language. I don't know if Mr. Benner wants to try to propose something.
Mr. Benner?
Sorry. I would like a condition that the sidewalk situation be addressed. Would you be amenable to based on ADA requirements, Mr. Simonello, that additional sidewalks be added to the project?
Yes, I mean, we're going to have to comply with ADA regardless. I think what Andrew's pointing out and some others, and maybe where the engineer was heading, was, I do see, I got my
Yeah.
glasses, but that the sidewalks don't extend all the way across the building frontage.
Correct.
And my guess is it's probably compliant ADA-wise, so I think, we condition that we would try to address, or we would address, where the buildings front to have sidewalk along the parking lots in those spots. I think that's where Mr. Hicks was heading.
I think that's reasonable. Would that be reasonable to you?
Yes, that's reasonable.
That's all I have right now.
I did have one additional question. The elevations provided on the clubhouse building, I think were in the packet. I think that just driving around on, not Reynoldsburg, but just the east side of the metro area is seeing similar clubhouses built in other communities in regards to the aesthetic appearance. And I think part of what we're trying to do here is make sure we establish a separate identity for Reynoldsburg and, to try to differentiate ourselves from maybe other areas of City of Columbus that's been annexing out this way. This is the clubhouse for the single-story units that we're looking at now. I think the clubhouse for the other multifamily.
Just the elevations.
Yeah, that'd be that elevation number 4 right there. Mr. Simonello, is there anything that you as the developer could do to spruce that elevation up a little bit and help differentiate it maybe from some of other similar projects that are going around, in the City of Columbus area?
I did hear that concern, Mr. Hicks, when we spoke, and we do have a rendering that took the cupola off. But after looking at that and speaking with Mr. Bowsher, when you look at our elevation and the entrance monuments, it's, they're more of a mission-style architecture. And we tried to use that to complement the architecture, the heavy brick and stone massing of the Ag Center across the street, because that's nice frontage there as well. So I think we could actually shorten that cupola a little bit to make it more similar to our entrance columns, and maybe have some larger overhangs on that cupola, and maybe end up with some brackets or on the building. So we would commit to do that on final design as well.
I think,
Probably shorten that up and maybe widen the overhang.
yeah, I think that would be excellent tweak to the elevation to help match and tie into the rest of your master development. So I think that's going in the right direction.
This is Mr. Zollers. Got a question. Can we see the entrance again? And is there a rendering with the clubhouse on the, what, do we know?
I don't think so, but we can pull up the other rendering again. We show the concept. Nope, that was it. Just back up. Oh, you had it. Wherever you clicked before. Yes, there. And then I'll just scroll up.
So you can see in front of the car on the left, the column with, there'll be larger ones with that feature out on Main Street.
Go one up.
And then each individual neighborhood will have those columns. So if we made the cupola more mirror that, instead of the typical one that's shown as more colonial.
As a point of reference, that the Cardinal Health building in Dublin is a similar look.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So this right here is the inspiration. So this is across the street right here, the Department of Agriculture. So they've taken sort of this architecture, modernized it a bit, and they've put it through the development. I'd add too, just for your sake, Mr. Seminello, this is actually not going to be the only clubhouse that'll be built. In the future phase, there's actually going to be a very large, several $1 million clubhouse with pool that'll be associated with that for the entire neighborhood and development, which will come later. So you've obviously got 2 multifamily developments, but then also an additional one that'll be there for everyone. And if you've been or have driven through the Pinnacle development on Buckeye Parkway, they have a very large, similar community center. It's more of a farmhouse feel. This will be more mission sort of brick feel.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Seminello, I have a minor question, request perhaps, regarding your landscape plan. So I see in the landscape plan that you specify, deciduous tree of this size, shrub of this size, et cetera. One of the things that we've tried to do in previous applications is increase the diversity of plant life there, such that if we had another emerald ash borer type incident, that there would be sufficient diversity there, that you wouldn't have to remove every street tree and everything like that. Would you be open to a condition, since you don't specify species and things like that in a very granular detail, to a condition such that you would have sufficient diversity to prevent something like that happening?
Yes, and that's been typical in other communities we've worked in the past half dozen years or so.
Great,
Sure.
thank you.
Mr. Hicks?
I had a couple of proposed conditions, just if we could talk about those real quick. And first one would be on the lot number 4, the clubhouse and cupola, that the applicant, when they submit for building permits, that they would add additional architecture to mimic the streetscape and columns along within the master development, and similar to the design of the Department of Agriculture building across the US 40. Does that sound kind of like what we're talking about here? And then in regards to the sidewalks, second condition would be that the developer shall add additional sidewalks internally on lot number 4 in compliance with the ADA, completing sidewalks across the entire frontage of each residential building, fronting, parking, and driveway areas. Does that sound sort of in the ballpark of what we're working on. Okay.
Good to hear.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I would like to move that we approve the Eastwood Major Site Plan under the following two conditions. First condition would be that the clubhouse and cupola on lot number 4, the architecture would be modified to mimic the streetscape and columns within the master development in order to match the Department of Agriculture building across the street on US 40. Second condition would be that the developer add additional sidewalks in the plot grade and utility plan internally on lot number 4 in compliance with the ADA, completing sidewalk access across the entire frontage of each residential building fronting the parking and driveway areas.
Okay, very good. We have a first, we have a Robert's rules. We can do, we have a second, then we'll have go into questions.
Yes, do,
All right, so we'll take a second.
you got the motion, take it to the second first.
Second to Mr. Hicks's motion.
This is Mr. First, I second the motion.
Love that. Okay, any questions? Mr. Brenner?
I do have a few questions, and I'm not sure about the language on the sidewalk. Number one, about the trees that Mr. First brought up, the trees have to be approved by the city. Who does that?
So we do, so we- for
We have an
clarification,
arborist.
we don't, like, approve each individual tree. We do have a list of approved trees that they can plant, which are all native species, deep growing roots. Obviously, we don't want sidewalks sort of bursting up.
So excuse me. So if they adhere to a list, it doesn't matter to us what trees they put?
So we would review this in detail during their detailed landscaping plan during the PGU process for those trees.
Okay. And do we consult the two arborists that we do have here with the
We
city?
do, because the one has to review it, so.
Okay, all right. Then as far as the trees are concerned, I'm finished, thank you. On the sidewalk, can you do your motion again, please? Or read
yeah.
it to me, or tell me what you...
I think the important parts that we identify lot number 4 on that side, and that all the sidewalks need to be in compliance with the ADA, which is kind of a given, but I think that also just explains our intent, what we're trying to make sure we have the connectivity here, and that they're completing the sidewalk on the frontage of each of those residential buildings against a parking field or a driveway. So, for example, number 5, building number 5 there, the sidewalk goes all the way across the building frontage on one side, but not on the other side. So you could take that all the way across, and there could be an additional crossing to get across the sidewalk there. Similar, building number 2, that seems appropriate along building number 2. But I think we're going to have to put this in the staff's hands when they review the plot grade and utility plan, that just needs to be more sidewalks on here. So, which is not untypical. I mean, I've had projects where, a lot of these municipalities, they can intelligently work with the applicant to make sure that they're being put in appropriate locations.
You have another question, Ms. Banner? Okay, that's good.
Thank you for,
Okay, we have a first and a second. Let's call the roll. Emily, please.
Mr. Benner?
yes.
Mr. First?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
And Mr. Zollers?
Yes. Okay, that's
Thank you.
number 1. Emily, when you get caught up on what you need to do, you can take us right into number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The second application this evening is for a preliminary plat. This is also for the Eastwood development. This is application number 2021-5214. This is to subdivide the parcel into initially the 5 lots as shown. And with that, are there any questions?
Mr. Simonella, would you like to start the conversation with anything, or anything you want to state?
No, this is just the engineering we need to subdivide
Okay.
the parcels, and it's the first step, the preliminary plat. Final plat might be adjusted for any engineering concerns, but this is just the first step that's required approval from your body.
And as the EMI had as well, it'll come back to this body for the final plats as well.
Any questions or statements from the commissioners? Okay, entertain a first and a second motion.
As Mr. First, I move that we approve this as submitted.
I will second Mr. First's motion.
Okay, very good. We have a first and a second. Emily, could you read the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. First,
Yes.
Mr. Hicks,
Yes.
and Mr. Zollers.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Simonello.
Appreciate it.
Great product. We're really excited. Thank you.
Yes.
Me as well, thanks.
Perfect. Okay. Then we will go into the third and final agenda item this evening, and that is the Oliver. Emily, whenever you're ready, we'll follow your lead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our final agenda item this evening is for the property at 1122 and 1170 Lancaster Avenue. This is for a development plan amendment, number 2021-5083. This is obviously a amendment to a previously approved development plan. The property is located on two parcels at 1122 and 1170 Lancaster Avenue. This is within the residential medium zone. The applicant is requesting Planning Commission approval of an amendment to an approved major site plan allowing for the construction of a new residential development on a 7.6 acre site. The project will consist of 24 townhome units with attached garages and 126 apartment units, as well as pavilion and dog park. There is an existing single-family home on the site. The development received major site plan approval at the November 5th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. At this time, no variances are being sought. Property is within residential medium zone, and proposed use, dwelling attached single family and dwelling multi-unit building complex is listed as a permitted use in RM. The proposed development complies with the RM zone in terms of building height, lot coverage, and setback requirements. The RM zone sets a max density of 24 units per acre. The proposal here calls for 19.7 units an acre. As far as the updated site layout, it is now showing two-story townhomes on the exterior and three-story apartment buildings concentrated in the development's interior. Again, the typology for dwelling attached single family does encourage rear garage access as well as private open space for each unit. Additionally, the comp plan encourages pedestrian-friendly features such as walking paths and trail connectivity. The development does meet the off-street parking requirement. Required parking for townhomes, one enclosed and one unenclosed off-street parking space. So each townhome unit will have a one-car garage as well as driveway parking. Apartments also require one parking space per unit. Thank you. Plus one for every 5 units, or 152 total spaces for 126 units. Access to the site and all units will be from dual drives along Lancaster Avenue. The northern access will be right in, right out only, while the southern access will be two-way. Traffic access study was conducted by EMH&T. There is an attached city engineer's report in the agenda packet, which concluded the proposed development is adequately served by existing road infrastructure. Pervious pavers are being proposed for the driveways as well as the townhome driveways, as well as the central north-south drive through the development. Landscape concept plan submitted does meet the zoning code requirements. Screening between residentially zoned properties is not required, but the proposed development does call for landscape screening along the perimeters of the lot. Additionally, preservation of the existing street trees. With that, I believe the applicant is here if they would like to add to that?
Mr. Bowser, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just a couple of clarifying things that I wanted to discuss. Obviously, the traffic study being number one. So what we had our engineer do was take calculations from 2019, which was the busiest year that we had on record here in the city. Obviously, we did not want to do, during the pandemic numbers. So we used Morpsey's traffic study counts from 2018, 2019 to utilize those. All of it was based off of the 150 units that were being proposed here this evening, regardless of the various of heights throughout. We went through the units specifically. The property was bought in 2020. I think there was a comment that was made that it did not. It transferred December 29th, 2020 to Principal Property Solutions LLC. I know that they're going to get into the differences between the previous submission and this submission, but the density has not been increased in a significant amount. Actually, it's just 0.02 to the density. And I just wanted to sort of get an update of how we got here. This was an approved development plan originally. The lot to the north is under contract being purchased by the Oliver. And they came back to us knowing that they had some constraints with their stormwater. They needed to fix some of those within their engineering, and they were not going to be able to do that on their current site. So regardless, it was going to need to be changed. Within doing so, added costs, they decided to take a look at the other adjacent properties. They originally had submitted for our April meeting. We had asked for them to pull that so we could continue to negotiate and work with them on a more palatable project, which they have submitted here this evening. And also, there was a comment that was made about this parcel being rezoned under, suspicion. This parcel to the north that's being proposed, in addition to the one that was already approved, was RM zoning classification, as was the rest of the development all at the same time. Had no bearing on the Oliver project. So just wanted to put those to bed and some clarification marks. I turn that back over to you, Chairman Zollers.
All right, thanks for that information, Mr. Bowser. Okay, we have a committee in front of us, so as you are speaking, if you could please identify who you are for the record, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
You guys want to
Sure.
start things off?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Glenn Duggar. I'm an attorney, 37 West Broad Street. I represent Michael Oliver, who's the Director of Principal Development, who is the contract purchaser, actually the owner of a portion of this property. I'm also here with Lori Gunzelman. Lori is the one who actually has to do the heavy lifting, who's the architect, the planner, and has really put this plan together. I'd like to thank staff, Ms. Wheeler, first of all, because I think that her summary of what's going on here in terms of this being a 7.6 acre application. It was previously 4.5. We made it 3.2 acres larger. The number of apartments, townhomes, et cetera, is 100% completely accurate, with which I agree completely. The second part of that is I'd also like to thank Mr. Bowser, because when we did bring this back earlier this year, we sat down with his staff, the administration, to try and work through how to make this thing work. And his guidance, the administration's leadership on this, was really, really helpful to get us to where we are today. So what I'd really like to do, I think, is cover that in a little bit greater detail. And the person to do that is Lori, because she did the plan work on the original 4.5 acres. It's now 7.6. It's a little bit bigger. The density's the same, but we basically have a slightly larger project on at least 60% of the same property. And so I guess Lori can walk you through what the old plan was, what the new plan was, what the new old architecture was, what the new architecture was. We think that the new plan, the new architecture is more responsive to some of the issues and concerns that the administration has. And then I'll kind of maybe wrap up at the end of the day, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's not necessary. Thank you very much for hearing us this evening and presenting the proposed revised amended site drawing. We really appreciate everyone's efforts on this one. We understood that there was a lot of concern about transitioning this project from the one-story neighborhood to the east. And we really took that to heart and worked hard to accommodate a lot of those concerns by proposing instead a two-story single family, or a two-story for sale product that would be adjacent to the single family residential neighborhood to the east and north. Due to the constraints of the site and how the grades work, we need to detain all of the water to the south. And that was one of the aspects of why we needed to meet with the city and redesign a lot of it. Thank you very much for pulling that up. As you can see, we still have townhouses on the Lancaster Avenue side. There are three triplexes, three homes on the Lancaster Avenue in two areas. We have porches also that we identified to the Lancaster Avenue at the request of and advice of the development office. And we also incorporated and maintained our dog park. It's in a slightly different location to the north, and we still have a park pavilion to the north as well. The other areas that we improved, we believe, is we created another access point to the north on Lancaster Avenue. We realize this is a larger development and that, street access is going to be important to that. We have 24 townhouses and 126 apartments. Our parking, we completely are able to park on site. The townhouse product has an enclosed parking garage that's attached and a surface lot in front of those. We still have a walking path completely around. We still want to encourage walking in this development. We are at 19.7 units per acre, so we are about 17% below our total what we could have. We are also reduced the height, so that transition from the single family two-story goes from the single family we've reduced that to 25 feet. So that is substantially less than what our three-story townhouse product is. And this is the product here that you're seeing on the screen. We still have the walk-up, we still have garages adjacent, and we still have outdoor balcony space on those front elevations. We go to the next slide. There's some renderings as well. The apartments did not change at all, so there's not a lot to talk about that. This is, again, along Lancaster Avenue, you'll see on the upper number 1 detail, east-facing, the front porches that we've incorporated on those facades so that there's a porch facing Lancaster Avenue. You have the next slide. Thank you. This is the townhouse. This is the apartment elevation, that hasn't changed at all from our previous submission. Next. Next. Again, the materials that we're using are exactly the same, but we are using them obviously a little bit differently on the two-story townhouse. Next, please. So this is the revised elevations for the two-story townhouse along Lancaster Avenue. We're still adopting the water retention basins, but also along the south. So we'll have a tree line access along that south drive. Next, please. Thank you. This is the Lancaster Avenue elevations showing the front porch, and we incorporated additional street trees along this Lancaster Avenue. Next, please. This is a better rendering of the two-story townhouse product with drives. You'll notice we have permeable paver parking in front of those single attached garages to incorporate an additional parking space for those for sale products. And again, the sidewalk that accesses along the drive there. Next, please. This is the, again, the apartments, not a lot of changes here. Next. We just thought it'd be a good idea to kind of maybe identify a little bit better what this retention would look like. There were some comments last time, and we thought maybe an image might help. The intent is really to have like a stone and vegetation basin that would be accessed and easily to walk around. So this is a bit of a detail of what that would look like. Next, please. Those are some landscaping details. This is the lighting, site lighting plan. We increased the number of, we have both pole lights and then street lights. These lights also were adopted from the Reynoldsburg plan, so they will match Reynoldsburg urban district. Next, please. And then we get into more of the engineering, showing their site plan with parking, shows the adjacent site properties as well. And the next, that shows more of the storm and utility plan connections. Thank you. And how we would connect those. The intent of the detention basins, again, also would be that they would be more free-formed. That'll be worked out in site engineering after we do all of our calculations. And that's pretty much our proposal. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I've got some questions, but I'll open it up to my peers over here. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gunzelman, thank you for bringing this back. Just to speak quickly to your landscaping, I appreciate the attention to detail that you have in there. I think that that should be a model for any city or any application, so thank you very much for that.
Certainly.
I do have a couple minor questions here. So the pavers for the driveways, for the for sale product, are those going to be maintained as like an HOA type responsibility, or would the homeowner be responsible for those?
That will be all under HOA.
Okay.
So similarly, you'll see on this landscape drawing, the site drawing, there's permeable pavers that run on that main, what I call it, the boulevard. So it's the same product. So all of that landscaping will be maintained by the HOA.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Now, regarding the south entrance there that goes into the church parking lot, I assume there won't be a problem getting an easement, given that you did purchase the adjacent property from the church?
Correct. Very similar to our previous proposal, there's an easement with the church to access that property. We also are connecting a storm through their property as well to the south as part of our, removal of stormwater. So all of those easements are either negotiated or in place. Is that correct, Michael? Yes.
Okay, great, thank you for that point of clarification. And one last thing, there was a public comment about the lighting in the center of the development here. I think the point of contention was around the apartments. Is there going to be lighting on the building to, that would kind of cover some of those spaces, or maybe they just misread the lighting plan? Are the public spaces all, adequately lit with the pole lighting?
Yes. The public spaces are adequately lit. We also have lighting in all of the canopies and/or overhangs. So everything is adequately lit, which is also required by building code.
Let me, to that point, Mr. First, and I believe Mr. Luzader says something too. At the top, that would be the north run. I don't see any lights on this drawing.
The north run.
The north driveway road.
Do you see the larger grayer areas? The larger gray blobs? Those are lights.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see on this drawing.
Okay, there are lights
There's
on
lights
that
all
street?
along, yes, all along
Okay.
the drive around, and then there's along the boulevard. Yeah, those large gray ones, those are still
Oh,
lights.
okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
And then, Mr. Chair, I will give the floor back here in a moment, but I do have a question for Ms. Wheeler. There was a comment made that this application does not meet the parking requirements in our code. I did not read that in your staff report. I read that it was adequately parked. Could you clarify, please?
Yes, I believe there was a change in, were they previously two-car garage?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah. But our code requires regardless, one enclosed and one unenclosed for the townhomes, so we still meet that requirement.
Thank you. I give the floor.
Thanks, Mr. First. Hold on. Mr. Hicks, you have anything? Yeah? Mr. Brenner? Okay, go ahead if you want. I've got one question if you want me to go. Okay. All right. The EMH&T, and I don't know how you access that, Emily, but on that, it referenced back to a fence or guardrail on number 18. I didn't bring that report with me. Yeah, there you go, that's it. Where are we talking about that on the drawings, and how will we address it?
I'm assuming that you're talking about the northern edge of the water retention.
Yeah,
Yes, based on the proposal, they're recommending that a fence or a guardrail be incorporated. Our preference would be to be more fence-like so that it looks more in keeping with the neighborhood. And obviously, we want to make sure that the residents are protected in that case.
okay, thank you. Okay, Mr.
I
Bennett?
would like to point out that if we do, add that as a condition, that we, allow us as staff to work with them to make something that's tasteful, that fits in. Sometimes these fences, I believe actually we talked about it, Mr. First, that, sometimes, especially in Columbus, they're pretty untasteful around this. And, we have bioswales just like this around the corner of Lancaster and Main and Memorial Plaza. If we put a fence around that, it would be pretty unsightly and just not really that natural. And these are not going to be filled with water at all times. These are dry basins. Only during rain events will they fill up. So I just want to be cognizant of that we're not adding additional maintenance and things that we'll have to take a look at later, or have something that just looks unsightly that's just unwarranted.
And Mr. Benner, if I may briefly impose upon your speaking time, but
Absolutely, you go first.
it is my preference. I don't particularly see a need for a railing or a fence here. As Mr. Boucher pointed out, we do have bioswales exactly like this, except in size, immediately around the corner, even from this building here. And I don't see that they pose a particular hazard as far as drowning or anything. These aren't the typical pond-like structures that you might see in other developments, in which case then I would be in favor of some sort of protective barrier. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mr. Benner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this is probably one of the longer applications that we've had. And I mean no offense, but probably one of the least popular that we've had. Well, let's just be honest, we're all grown-ups here. Part of that is the project was sold as Mr. Oliver being a friend of Reynoldsburg with ties to the community and wanting to do the right thing. But there are a number of folks out there, and I empathize and understand all of their concerns. I've lived here longer than many people here have been alive. And, Brookside is an old established neighborhood, and a three-story apartment building right in the middle of it is going to be difficult to take. I've advised most of those people that have done those complaints, get involved with your city and don't wait until it smacks you in the face. Get involved early in the process when codes are being written, land is being zoned, et cetera. I appreciate everything that you folks have done thus far. If I'm not out of line, who's calling the shots here? I know that the city met, I believe the administration, maybe some council members, to try to, as you said, work this out and make it a viable product. I was told, I believe, that this was the only way that you could viably make any money on this project, something along those lines. Is that an accurate statement of how you arrived at this particular plan with the additional apartments and cutting back on the townhomes?
When I was first approached by Michael and we started to develop that first proposal, it was always his intent to increase this neighborhood into a larger area. I don't think he anticipated getting that parcel to the north as quickly as he did, and when we were presented with that opportunity, it just made sense for us to be able to acquire that and incorporate it into the current design. Since we were already there, it made more sense to do it now. I will also say that we started this process well before COVID, and construction costs have almost doubled, if not tripled, in many cases. And that, along with many of the other challenges on the site with water retention, it made more sense for us to be able to take this product and make it work from a pro forma standpoint. And, developers don't go into this to lose money. They certainly, if they did, we wouldn't have all of the beautiful housing developments that we have currently. So yes, absolutely. It was very important that we were able to expand this project in a way that made sense from a financial aspect. But having said that, we had a proposal that was even more expansive than this, and we reduced it because after talking with with the city, the administration and Andrew's office, it was very clear that, we were coming up with some challenges, and we have never tried to shove anything down anybody's throat, right? So our goal is to be a neighbor, a good neighbor, an involved community member, and to hear the concerns and address those concerns. And we all sat back, and when we presented this revised application, one of the things we said, I'm glad they made us do that, because this 2-story is really awesome. It's so much better than the 3-story.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited about it. And so I think, it's one of those situations that I think it's a win-win for everybody. And but to your point, yes, absolutely. Economics does drive a lot of what we did and a lot of the decision-making.
It's to be expected, and I appreciate your answer. You almost made me forget the rest of my questions, which would have been very talented on your part. The drawings indicate that the buffer planting along the north and the east are not required, but are intended. Intended, since you do have an attorney here, we all know that intended means absolutely nothing. Is there anything you can do to guarantee us that those plantings will occur?
I don't do a lot of projects I do projects with a little stronger word than intended. My reputation obviously is on the project, and having worked with Michael through this process, everything he said he was going to do, he has done. He's not given me any reasons to make concern. And one of the beautiful parts of this is that northern edge that's sort of on the east end. Already, I would notice, I said, they already have mature trees there. So like some of those it's already planted,
Right.
Which I said, wow, that's a bonus. But no,
Primarily, I guess I'm talking about the parking lot
of
for
course,
the church
yes,
on the south.
absolutely.
To have something
It's the vision
there
of the
to-
project.
I'm
In
sorry?
fact, it's the vision of the project, and we definitely are committed to having a landscape plan that addresses the Boulevard LA and allows us to have a walkable street, and that's the vision of the project.
Okay, so I have an intention and I have a vision.
We are
Mr.
committed
Benner,
to make sure that the,
I'm sorry, they are required to
I'm
comply
an
with the
attorney here.
submission.
Want to get anybody in trouble.
I'm sorry, Mr. First, what?
They are required to comply with what they submit here.
Well, the submission says they're intended. That doesn't mean anything to me.
We do have a landscape plan, I believe
I've
that
got to
that
jump in
was.
here, I'm sorry,
All
you're doing
right.
great.
Thanks.
You're killing
There
it.
it
No,
is.
no, that's okay, no.
No.
So we've shown a plan, the plan has landscape on it, right? We also have to then additionally supply what's called a plot grade utility plan. I can't, Andrew threw me off when you first called it with the PGU, and I just had to figure out what that acronym meant first. But what the simple, easy thing to do is, I think the term was bait and switch, and that is obviously none of Lori and my intention here is because we have to come back, right? So we have to have the ability to say, Mr. Oliver, you have to do this, right? So the way to do that is to say that our landscape plan, which we have shown you, would be fully and completely articulated as a part of the plot grade utility plan. If you want to make that a condition, great. I think it kind of is anyway.
It is.
But if you need to specifically say that, that's fine with me, because I think we have to do that anyway.
I think what you were getting hung up on, just if I could clarify, when they said intended, they mean that they were intentionally doing that to block it, not that they had to. You know what I mean?
That's a very
Yes.
lawyerly answer, Mr. Boucher. I'm not sure I'd go there, but it's fine. But lawyer's 100% right. We like to speak in terms of very black and white, in terms of what has to be done and what doesn't have to be done. We have to do that landscaping plan there, okay?
Perfect.
And you get to see it again as part of the plot grade utility plan. How's that?
That's perfect. And by the way, I did not use the term bait and switch.
No, I know you didn't. No,
Okay.
but some people
All right.
did through this process.
For the record,
And-
Mr.
and-
Attorney.
And developers get accused of that all the time. I'm really sensitive about it. And so I think that it's important for us to be very clear about what you're approving and what we're going to submit the next time around.
And I appreciate that.
Mr. Benner, you have another question?
I'm far from finished,
Oh, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, unless you want to shut me up.
No, let's get some yes
All
or no's
right.
out here.
On your paperwork or on the, can you get the drawing of the parking lot again? I don't know that you need, not that one. Anyway, it says there are 8 ADA spaces. That's not the one either, Emily. I'm sorry. That one, I believe. Can you blow that up?
If you can go to the civil drawing,
Okay.
it's easier to see.
Thank you.
It's harder to see on this.
It's harder to see when you're old and got glasses
Well,
on.
yeah, my eyes aren't as what they used to be either.
And this is not a huge deal, but it does say there are 8, and I'm only able to find 7.
Okay.
Blow that one up, I think. Blow this all up. Yes, there they are. So there's 2 in front of the town, between the townhomes and the apartments. I think there's 2 directly across. There's 3 sets of 2, and then there's 1 out towards the Lancaster Avenue side. Four, 6, 8. You know what?
Yeah.
Never
there's-
mind.
Yep. That's okay.
Well, you know what? Look at the drawing with the rendering.
Yeah,
Apparently, one of those is hidden by a tree.
okay. Well, it might be.
Never
But
mind.
yeah, I knew it was easier to see on here because she actually put the ADA sticker on there.
Right, so we do have 8 of those. Board and batten, is that a hardy board material, or is that vertical vinyl, or?
It's a vertical composite material. So cement board is a composite. This is a different type of composite, but it's a composite material.
It's not vinyl, then?
It's not vinyl.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question, actually, I got over the weeks listening to some of the citizenry complain, and I don't really think there's much you can do about it, but the dumpsters, if we could get the drawing, they're both at the, I believe, northwest and southwest, or southeast corners. Right back there.
And they'll be in dumpster enclosures, so there'll be an enclosure around those dumpsters. is
When
that-
you say enclosure, you're talking fence or,
Yeah, it would either be a masonry or a wood type
Okay.
fence, correct?
okay. And are those 2 the only ones for the area or for the
Yes.
project? Okay,
And we also have vegetation around them too to help screen them.
okay. Screening wasn't the actual complaint, it was
Oh,
the
odor.
odoriferous nature of having dumpsters back there. But if they can't be moved, they can't be moved. Who will manage the apartments?
There will be an apartment management company, but I can't tell you exactly who that is.
Okay. And you say there'll be an HOA for the
Townhouse
owned
product.
townhomes, provided that those sell? And how long before you'll turn the HOA over to the people that live there? Will you maintain it for a period of time, or?
I think that is to be determined. I don't know that all of the details have been worked out in that particular,
Is it not standard that until a certain portion of the properties are
Usually,
sold, that
yes.
you will maintain
that
as
is
HOA?
correct.
And
Right.
you will,
There's usually a percentage that
Yeah.
of ownership before it will be turned over to official HOA homeownership.
I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, no
I'll give
problem.
it back to you.
Okay, Ms. Bittner, thank you very much. Anything else from the commissioners up here? Anything the staff wants to add? All right, we're at a crossroads. We need a motion one way or the other.
As Mr. First, I move that we accept this application as submitted.
We have a first. Can I get a second?
Mr. Hicks, I'll second.
Thank you. Emily, could you call the roll,
Oh,
please?
I would like just discussion
go ahead, Mr. Hicks.
before we vote, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think when the project was originally proposed, some of my biggest concerns were the three-story townhomes and the proximity to the house on Lancaster. I think it was 1122 or something. And it always kind of felt like me, the site would work better if that lot were included in the development in order to make it work a little bit better. I think the biggest thing I've been struggling with on this, as we've reviewed all the materials, is that this is what technically an amendment to already an approved plan. And so I'm asking myself, looking at the elevations in the site plan, is this a better plan for the neighborhood than the old plan was? Is this a better plan for the city than the old plan was? And I think reducing the height of the townhouse buildings from 3 to 2, which was overwhelmingly the biggest issue that we were dealing with, especially at proximity to Brookside, I think that it is an improvement over the prior plan. And so I just wanted to make that as a statement and part of before we vote.
All right. Emily, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Benner?
Yes.
Mr. First?
Yes.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
And Mr. Zollers?
Yes.
4 yeses, the motion carries.
Thank you very much for your
Okay.
time.
Okay. Okay, so let me get back to the agenda. Is there any other business? All right, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone and all.
Thank you.
Thank you.